Continuing our discussion, let's turn to our panel. Amy Holmes, anchor of the Hot List on Glenn Beck's The Blaze TV. She is an independent conservative, and she joins us from New York. And Richard Fowler, host of The Richard Fowler Show, and a specialist in progressive messaging and millennial engagement. He joins me from our nation's capital. All right, Amy, we'll start with you. Your reaction to Wisconsin.
My reaction was that it was a Wisconsin walloping for Donald Trump, as well as for Hillary Clinton, that you had these outside contenders, Ted Cruz and Bernie Sanders, who a year ago no one thought would be in the inner circle, in the inner ring, trying to beat out these other rivals. So I think it was fascinating. We'll see how it moves on to New York. On the Republican side, you have Donald Trump, who of course is the hometown hero for New York City at least, and Hillary Clinton, who served as the senator from New York for 2 terms, but they've got some pretty tough rivals right on their heels.
Richard Fowler, they should, if they don't win New York, they're both in trouble. Would you say, Richard?
Yeah, I tend to agree with that, and I agree with Amy on this one. But talking about New York specifically, I think if Hillary doesn't win New York, her campaign is in big trouble. If Donald Trump doesn't win New York, his campaign is in big trouble. All the polls, though, indicate that both Hillary and Donald Trump will both have good nights a couple Tuesdays from now when they will both take home their quote-unquote home states. Now, I think with that being said, I think that this ideal of Ted Cruz winning Wisconsin is what I would like to call a fool's gold. So yes, he did win Wisconsin, but at the end of the day, Donald Trump is still ahead in the total national vote or the popular vote, and he's also ahead in the delegate count. And for Ted Cruz to really have a shot at this, he's going to have to do really well in the next couple states, and that's going to be really hard for him to do, Larry. Think about it. You have Pennsylvania, New Jersey, Connecticut, Rhode Island, New York, all places where Donald Trump will play very well, and Ted Cruz's Southern politics doesn't work.
Our previous guest, Amy Reed Dickens, says that Trump will have trouble if it goes to the convention. You agree?
I think that's right. And of course, you've heard Republican Party members say the convention is not about the popular vote. It's about the party. And the party is a club. And that club has members. And Donald Trump is not one of them. You also have Donald Trump threatening the Republican Party, suggesting that he would not support the frontrunner, even possibly run as a third-party candidate, which is not something that the party wants to hear. A couple weeks ago, I was chatting with a lobbyist friend of mine, longtime lobbyist, who's personal friends with Paul Ryan and United States senators because of the work that he does. And he said, you have to remember, too, that the Republican National Committee, they want someone at the head of the ticket who's going to be willing to fundraise for all those other candidates who are down ticket. And they're very concerned that Donald Trump has shown no willingness to do so. He personally has never cut checks for the RNC. So they don't see him as a team player and someone who can build the party, but rather gut the party and leave it a shambles.
On the other hand, Richard, Cruz is not a popular Republican, is he, among the insiders?
Not remotely, which is what makes it, which was going to make this convention so interesting. In a convention versus, it's like, which one do we hate the most, or which one do we hate the least, right? If you talk to all of his colleagues in the United States Senate, they all adamantly hate him. They hate doing business with him. They hate working with him. And most of the Republicans the Republican establishment find Donald Trump to be inflammatory. So what's going to happen in this convention is anybody's guess. But with that being said, we're talking about multiple ballots here. Like, there's no question there will be a brokered convention going into Cleveland, but how many ballots will there be, right? So Donald Trump will probably do pretty well in the first ballot, then 57% of his delegates become unbound and could vote for any candidate, and then in the third ballot, about 80% of the delegates become unbound, which makes it crazy, right? And so the question is what will happen? And I think Amy is right that yes, indeed, the party is a club. But with that being said, if the Republican Party wants these Donald Trump voters to turn out for them in November, they cannot disenfranchise them by trying to push him out via rules and cloaks of secrecy.
Well, it's not cloaks of secrecy. It's an open, the rule book is open for anyone to study and to master, which, as we've learned over this past election cycle, Donald Trump has no interest in doing. He doesn't master the issues, the policy, let alone when it comes to Republican Party rules. And there's always the possibility, of course, of some outside candidate who's not even running for president right now to step forward. I agree it's going to be a brawl, and it may split the Republican Party. Where will those Donald Trump voters go? They might just stay home. But on the other hand, Republicans have been looking at those Trump voters and how likely are they to go to the polls in November anyway. He's bringing in a lot of new people that Republicans can't necessarily count on as voters. But as an outsider, I'm not a Republican. I have no dog in this fight. It's fascinating. It's going to be entertaining and extremely interesting in terms of political history, that's for sure.
Richard, what happens
Sure,
to...
Amy, you could bring the popcorn.
Richard, what happens to John Kasich?
Well, John Kasich's a player here because John Kasich has about 140 some odd delegates. He can direct his delegates to go either way. And you think about it, but by June 2nd, Donald Trump will probably be somewhere in the neck of the woods of 1,000 or maybe 1,100 delegates, meaning 143 delegates from John Kasich becomes a very powerful, making him a kingmaker, right? Can he release his delegates to go to Trump? Does he release his delegates to go to Cruz? Does he release his delegates to go to some sort of third option, possibly Paul Ryan, which is what you're hearing on Capitol Hill, the building behind me there? A lot of people are floating this Paul Ryan name as a possible third option. So he's very, very powerful. Both him and Marco Rubio are players if there is a brokered convention.
All right, you want to give me a prediction, Amy? Who will be the nominee?
Oh, goodness, I would not be so arrogant as to make that type of prediction. But I think whoever the nominee is, they're going to have to do a lot of work to bring the Republican Party together. If that nominee is Donald Trump, he may want to look at John Kasich or Marco Rubio, despite the names that he's called the United States Senator, as someone who can bring the party together, try to build that coalition going into November. On the Democratic side of the aisle, I still think Hillary Clinton, she looks like she'll be the nominee. Who would she choose as her Veep? I would suggest Bernie Sanders. After all, he's doing very well with white males, young people, and voters that she needs very badly to put together that Obama coalition that was so successful in 2008 and 2012. I happen to disagree with Reed, your previous guest, when he said that young people don't come out to vote. Barack Obama, President Obama, proved that they do if they are fired up. And they are fired up for Bernie Sanders. And again, to the point about the female vote, I talked to a lot of young people, including a young woman just a couple weeks ago who comes from a long line of powerful and proud Democrats. And that pitch that Hillary Clinton being the first female president does nothing for her. She's much more excited about Bernie Sanders. And I think you're seeing that in the polling, in the exit polling as well. So Hillary Clinton might look to him as someone who ironically could shore up groups that she needs to go into November.
And Richard, what do you think will happen?
Well, one, I agree with Amy, which is a rarity, on what Reed said. I think he's absolutely wrong. Here's the thing about millennial voters that I could tell you very well. I study them. I know them. They're not going to go out just because it's the right thing to do. They're going to go out because you urge them to go out. You have to reach out to these voters. So if you think that millennials are going to turn up for you just because you have a page on your website dedicated to them, that's not how you get them. You have to engage them and go after them. But if you go after them, they will reward you gratefully, as President Obama could tell you, because they rewarded him both in 2008 and 2012, and they were the only demographic to stay with the Democratic Party in 2010 when every other demographic left the party. But you have to go after those voters. Now, as far as predictions, Larry, it's really hard to know who will be the GOP nominee, but whoever that GOP nominee is, they'll have a 60-day sprint, 60 to 90 days to get them from the convention to November. They're going to spend 30 to maybe 40 of those days really trying to rebuild the party, which is not good going into a general election against Hillary Clinton and most likely a unified Democratic Party. So they're going to have a really, really tough time. If it's Donald Trump, I'm not really sure what he's going to do. If it's Ted Cruz, he's going to have to find a way to move himself to the center. And I just don't think that's possible. Now, as far as on my side of the aisle, or on the Democratic side, I think Hillary Clinton will be the nominee. I agree with Reed. I think she should pick somebody who is very, very non-controversial, somebody like a Tim Kaine from Virginia, and Al Franken from Minnesota, who will sort of allow her to sort of run. And she doesn't want too much power at the bottom of the ticket. They'll give her an opportunity to sort of really expand upon her ideals, expand upon her message to the American people of breaking down barriers.
But hold on, why not Bernie Sanders, given how much success he's had in this election cycle, going from the way back to where we are now?
Well, I think that's a good point, Amy. But here's the problem with Bernie Sanders. I think there's such a chasm between where Hillary Clinton is and where Bernie Sanders is that it makes it really hard for him to be the vice presidential candidate. And history shows us, as you look at 2008, everybody was saying Obama should pick Hillary, and he said the same thing. The chasm is too wide for me to pick her as the vice presidential candidate. And he picked somebody who was a little bit more vanilla, who we still love, which is Joe Biden.
If we go back to 1960, Kennedy picked Johnson.
True.
Won
Very
the
true.
election. Hey, thanks to both of you. Always great having you with us. You'll probably be with us 100 more times throughout the...
I hope so. Thank you.
Thanks, Larry. Appreciate it.
I want to thank Richard Fowler and Amy Holmes.